안녕하세요. 저는 정은기입니다. 나는 진해 한국에서 왔어요. 저는 미국 사람 입양인이에요. Hi, my name is Steven. I was born in Jinhae, South Korea, and I was adopted at 4 months old, and I grew up in Texas. Right now, my wife and I live in New Haven, Connecticut, and I work for a refugee resettlement agency. I would describe my younger self as I was pretty quiet, kind of shy. I collected a lot of things when I was a lot younger. Collected coins and stamps and rocks, all sorts of weird, interesting things. I was fairly creative in the sense that I would entertain myself often. I would I remember making up games that I would play by myself or maybe with friends. I was, a pretty good kid. I think my friends and I would occasionally get into some occasional mischief, but it was mostly harmless kind of stuff. I don't like to use the word normal because what the heck does that even mean? But I was a pretty typical kid, I guess. Went to school, was really into sports. I didn't really like to stick out, I think, in a lot of ways. I maybe became a sort of an expert at blending in. Maybe those were survival or coping mechanisms, but I really, because of that, I think I developed a lot of strong interpersonal skills, maybe. Being a minority, maybe, or being in a context where you kind of automatically, by nature of your existence, tend to stick out, or you're not a part of the majority group. You learn that you learn ways to try to fit in as best as you can, because you don't want to be the one that is always the oddball or is different. Some of that is just being a kid or being in adolescent period of life. But when you already have something that makes you kind of stand out naturally, you usually want to mitigate that as best as you can. I think, like many adoptees, transracial adoptees, I grew up in a mostly white, mostly suburban middle class family, and also context, environment, school, church, neighborhood. And so, when I talk about sticking out, the looking different from your family is the obvious one, but then also looking different at school or at the grocery store or walking down the street. It kind of makes you very much aware of who you are at a very early age in life. When I was younger, and embarrassingly enough, my favorite childhood possession was this like pink and pastel colored robe of my mother's. I I don't really remember it all that much, but my family will tell stories about how I would, carry it with me everywhere, and how they would have to actually take it from me while I was sleeping, just so they could wash it. And then when I woke up, I would go and I would sit outside the dryer for it to finish washing until I could get it back out. So I hope this this video doesn't go viral or anything, because I'm probably gonna regret saying that. But I can't hide the truth, I guess. When I was a child, I really wanted to be an an NBA player. I wanted to play professional basketball. I remember practicing out in my driveway and going to basketball camps when I was younger. I think I also wanted to be a police officer at one point. Um, and both of those dreams or ideas have pretty much died. But I like to think that there's still time. um, but I remember, wanting to be what other kids wanted to be. Part of it, I think, was definitely wanting to fit in. Um, some of it was probably a combination of both. Wanting to fit in and also wanting to do what I enjoyed. Um, I think it took me a while to really figure out what I was good at, where maybe the world's greatest need and also my greatest strengths and joys were able to intertwine and meet. And I think part of it was because I always wanted to to fit in or do what was expected of me, or to be what I thought was an admirable goal, or what society might um, demand or want from me as a person. So it's an ongoing process. I'm still trying to figure out in a lot of ways what I want to be when I grow up. As a child, when I was in school, I was really blessed, I think, in some ways, with some really great friends. Most of whom I would still consider some of my best friends. Guys that I met in third, fourth, fifth grade, and we're still really close friends. That seems a little bit rare these days. And so, something I'm definitely really grateful for. And like I said before, it was a mostly white middle class suburban school. So I remember there being one or maybe two other East Asian looking students that I kind of tried to distance myself from, I think, in school, because they were kind of also the outsider, and I didn't, I thought somehow, like, I could elevate myself to not being associated with them somehow. So it was tough to sometimes just to feel a bit like an outsider in that sense. So I got the typical Asian jokes. I'll never forget the first time I was called a chink in a really mean kind of public setting. And so I think I really internalized a lot of that. As a student at the time, as a young person, thinking that maybe something was wrong with me, or maybe I I had done something wrong, or that I could somehow fool myself, or convince myself that I could become something that I'm not, become white, or become a part of the majority, and I don't know if it took me a while, I think, once I had finished school, to really realize that that people are just different, and it took some exposure to more diverse settings before I could really figure that out. That's one thing that I regret about my upbringing, is not being aware enough at the time to connect with people that looked like me, or had a shared heritage or history. Um, and as I alluded to before, part of the reason was because those kids were made fun of. I was made fun of. And when you're a young person, you know, you, you try to avoid being made fun of at all times. School and the playground can be kind of a brutal, harsh um, place to be. And so um, I knew that those people are different, and I don't want to be like them because they're different. I want to, be, um, I want to exist in a place where I can feel normal, or quote unquote, you know, average. I want to be a kid like everyone else and not be the outsider who isn't, classified as in the same way. And so, I think part of it was that kind of disassociation. When I was growing up, my role models, I certainly had my mother and father, and a spattering of pretty good, decent people in my life. I really looked up to my sister, and still do, she's also a Korean-born adoptee. She's about 2 years older than I am. And since I've gotten older, I've had more mentor-like figures that I've sort of inserted into my life. But I guess when I was younger, uh, the one gap that was there, and I maybe this is becoming a theme, um, was the fact that there weren't many positive influences in my life that looked like me. So I think my parents, they tried their best to do what they could, to kind of diversify our sphere of people that were around us. Um, but the fact of the matter was that there just weren't many options based on where we lived and the things that we were involved in growing up. There were some people that I remember. I was into Taekwondo for a while, and the instructor was Korean. But it felt in some way kind of like um, not a real viable option as a role model, maybe more as a somebody on the periphery, and not somebody who was in the core of my life. And almost like I don't almost like a token, I would say. Um, Especially I would say in the media, or the public sphere. You know, um, Stephen Yoon wasn't killing zombies on The Walking Dead, or Fresh Off the Boat wasn't on a major network. It was usually the opposite. There were nerdy Asian kids on TV that never got the girl, or it was always that kind of replaying role that you see often on TV. I think that's starting to change, and I hope it continues in that direction. But especially when I was younger, we didn't have um, very many public role models. For me, the positive elements and components of that show are just the fact that there are people that look like me on TV, and they are portrayed as the full complex human beings that they are. They're not just stereotypes that are being um, you know replayed over and over again. They have quirkiness to them. Their characters are well developed. Um, you know, they can, they make mistakes on the show, and they're not held to the standard of an entire ethnic group. You know, it they're just they're just a family that has things that every family goes through. And so, that, in my opinion, that's, the major thing that I can really relate to and benefit from, is just that they're a different looking family, and that they um, uh, are just that. They're complicated, and it's not oversimplified. There are some parts that I feel like I can't relate to, in the sense of being a part of a, first generation immigrant family, um, that had a different financial situation than I did growing up, and that had to deal with, um, very distinct elements of what it means to be an immigrant. Um, whereas I came, my immigrant story was that I came and I don't remember it. And so, there are some parts of the show that I can't relate to as much as other parts. I would tell my younger self that you will never be in the NBA. Don't waste your time. Study hard. You stopped growing at about 15 years old, and I, you know, I probably wouldn't say that just yet, because I think in the back of my head, I still know that there's still time. Maybe when I turn 30, that my dream will become a reality. But um, I I think but really, if I could sit down with myself as a much younger person, um, I think I would just sit and listen to myself. As kind of strange as that sounds, there's so much noise out there, because I don't remember, as a young person, uh, being able to have a voice in that way, like a platform where somebody could, where I could just say whatever I wanted. Um, yeah, and after that, I think I'd probably tell myself a lot of things. I would tell myself to, question everything, or especially question the meaning of normal. Um, despite the fact that you may not see very many positive reflections of people that look like you on TV. Those people exist. They are real, and are floating through the world. And um, you know, just because you don't see them in a public setting doesn't mean that they're not out there. So take pride in the fullness of who you are, your beliefs, your religion, your ethnicity, your country of origin or country of birth. Those things are important, and it's part of who you are as a person. And to diminish any part of yourself is, for the sake of of anything, is a real shame, because the world needs to know you, and you have things to contribute. um, I I would also probably tell myself that you are a man. um, you are a strong and wonderful person. Um, And when I talk about being a man or being strong, what I mean is that, um, somebody who is generous and, forgiving, sacrificial, a person of conviction and integrity, um, humble, compassionate, somebody who sticks up for others. To me, that's what I mean when I talk about being a man. And so, question, what you see around you. That um, to be normal is a facade. It's an idea that is, often portrayed um, in one way, but there's a a diversity of options that, of who you can be or who you want to be or who you are. um, I would want to tell myself, I think, to be more vocal, um, to speak up and to fight back, if if somebody is making fun of you, or if somebody is doing something that is wrong. Um, if somebody says something racist, don't let that slide. Um, that's something that I think I still have a really hard time with. So, um, you know, but you can never be neutral. If you say nothing, or if you let something go, it's silence is the same thing as approval. If you let things go on as they are, um, it's like you're saying that is okay. And I think that I would want to tell myself that, there's a lot of things that aren't okay, and you should, if you can, and if you can muster up the courage, that's a good and wonderful thing to do. Um, a lot of times the idea or the notion of being adopted is kind of, um, it's worn like a scar, I think, or maybe there's stigma attached to it, for a lot of reasons. I'm sure. Kids say things like, oh, I'm sorry you're adopted, or there's jokes on the internet about, like, people finding out they were adopted, and um, whatever. But I would want to tell a young person or a younger version of myself that, you know um, your story and your experience is valuable, just because it's yours. But even more than that, it's valuable because it helps you relate to all sorts of different kinds of people. You can exist in and be fully Korean, but then you also have the skills to go back and forth between cultural groups and ethnic groups, which is tough to do. It helps you to see people that are, might otherwise be invisible, who might exist kind of on the margins, because you've been there, and you know what that is like. Um, it gives you the ability maybe to go back and forth, with relative ease between histories, and between heritages, and that is a skill that is crucial to have in our ever changing, ever globalizing world. um, and it's going to help you in the future. So despite um, what may seem like something that is weighing you down, I think that your story is is also something that can lift you up. So I would I would tell you, younger self, to take care of yourself. Really invest in who you are, invest in yourself. Do the things that make you happy. Ask for help when you need it. Because if you can't do that, then your relationships with those around you are going to suffer. Because if you aren't strong enough to um, to take care of yourself, then it doesn't give you the ability to take care of other people. Um, it's important to also, I think it's important to be vulnerable. Um, there's great power in the ability um, there's great power in the ability to share uh, the broken and fractured parts of your life with others. This kind of facade that I think I put on for a lot of parts of my life, the facade of you know blending in or perfection or having things all together. It's a survival tool, and it's a mechanism and it's a tool for the weak. It takes a really strong person to open up and allow people into their lives and to be genuine and to share your story. And I want you to be a person um, who's strong and thriving. And I guess it's one of the great paradoxes of life. It's, when um, we're made strong by our ability to allow ourselves to be weak, and to be um, vulnerable and put ourselves out there. But it gives you a way to connect with other people, where you can help them and they can also help you. So currently I am working on developing a relationship with my birth family. So several years ago, I found out that I have this birth family that was alive and that reuniting was a possibility. And so it took me a while, but I decided that, eventually, that it was something that was important to me, and something that I wanted to pursue. Um, and so, just last year, I had the opportunity and really the privilege to meet some of my birth family. And the whole kind of search process is a long story in itself. But maybe I'll just share a little bit about where I'm at right now in this current moment. Maybe with the hope that someone else out there is also feeling in a similar way, or maybe we can share a moment of solidarity together. But it's a really personal thing that is certainly different for everyone. And everybody has a different narrative and story, and everybody's going to come at it with a different perspective too. Um, so, I guess I give that disclaimer that, don't let people tell you there's a right way or a wrong way to do whatever you want when it comes to dealing with um, your biological family. That's, it's your story. It's not anybody else's. So again, for me, it's been a really long, complicated story. But right now, I've been kind of struggling a little bit, feeling like I'm stuck between two worlds, you know, quite literally. I have a family that I love and care about in Texas, and also a family that I, you know, love and care about in Korea. Um, so, and I've talked about this with other adoptees, which has been so helpful. But going to Korea and meeting my birth family last year was one of the the hardest things I've ever done. You know, I've told other people this, but it's I've yet to do a lot of things in my life. I'm sure I will have kids one day, and I will battle terrible health issues, and I will lose people that I care about. And, but this I can say now will be up there as one of the toughest things that I've ever done and ever will do. And part of it is that it's just terrifying. There's no way to really explain it. And and now that we've met, I find myself kind of realizing that I have no idea what I'm doing, and that's part of the scary part. There's no script that I can follow. I have other people's experiences to help provide some guidance and wisdom, but I don't know what I'm doing. These people are my family, but they don't. We have a communication barrier, and in a lot of ways, they are strangers. I don't know. We don't have a shared history, despite our bloodlines. I don't have memories that I can fall back on when we have a tough time or a frustrating moment. I find myself wanting so badly to communicate with them and to tell stories and to reminisce about old times that, the good old days that never were, maybe. I don't know. But we don't really have those kind of memories that we've built together like I have with my family in Texas. So, we barely talk to one another. I don't know I don't know what they expect from me. And I think from their perspective, they're probably just as confused and, conflicted and unsure, and afraid. Um, but outside of an occasional text message from my younger sister in Korea, we don't really stay in touch. And I struggle with that because I want so badly to have that connection. There's a language barrier and a cultural barrier, but it's just an ongoing challenge, and for a lot of reasons. And I think it's made me a stronger person. I'm still fragile, but I'm also realizing that I'm more resilient than I thought I was. It is, it's tough. I don't know how else to really. There aren't. I don't have words that are good enough to describe um, the profound nature of this these relationships. I hope this video was helpful to somewhere watching, and to all of the younger adoptees, wherever you are or whatever you are doing. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. I can't I can't promise that life will always be easy or that you'll always get what you want. But I know with pretty, with little doubt that the world can be a beautiful and awesome place. Thank you for watching, and I wish you all the best.